your computer muted. There's going to be a way. I mean, you can actually raise your hand through the icon that's provided in this chat or in this room, and also you can raise questions within the chat room. Becky Jones will be monitoring the chat room as well as others, and we'll be bringing those questions in hopefully in a timely way during the presentation, so that we can try to address those as best we can. The other thing is there's going to be a exit survey for every participant to consider filling out. We'd really encourage you to do that. In the exit survey, it talks about prioritizing and offers some open comments that you can make about this presentation and the overall exploration that we're having about a possible bond coming up. I think the other thing I want to say is that this is an information sharing forum with the board. So the complete board is going to be present. As I present the information, questions can be raised. We will try to get to those issues. This same presentation will be replicated again on the 13th and possibly the following, I'm trying to think of the next date, possibly the following date of the forum as well, depending on how we're getting participation and what kind of trends we're seeing from comments and those types of things. We may be able to move quicker into discussions in more details following the next two forums. We'll have to leave that open until we see how things roll out today. So I think we're almost to 11:10. Okay, so let me give you a general welcome. This is our community forum presentation. It's an open forum with the Marshall Public School Board, as well as a number of stakeholders around our district, across all communities and hopefully all townships. This is the first of four that are already on our schedule. These are open sessions. We're going to be taking questions and getting feedback from you in regards to the survey at the end of the session today. The agenda, as you see in front of you, is going to be a rolled agenda. So throughout the presentation, this agenda will come up as we move from one section to the other. This is in coordination with Marshall Public Schools and our partners that we've had for some time in regards to capital improvement bonds, King Scott, and which is our architectural firm, and CSM, which is our construction firm. I'm Dr. Randy Davis. I'm the superintendent for the Marshall Public Schools, serving the communities of Marshall and Albion. Richard Lindsay is our spokesperson for the board right now and soon to be approved as board president for the next term. And I'll be bringing him in for some communications. I want to introduce also that we've got a new board member that's come on board, and that's Matt Davis. He'll be joining us on the 11th. Hey, Matt. Amanda Lankert is also confirmed as a new board member after appointment, and she's fully coming on board on the 11th. We've got Lisa Middleton, who is serving and has been serving on the board for some time. I apologize, I don't have the number of years. We've got Larry Williams, who is serving in and is a current board member. Carrie Nicholson, Dr. Carrie Nicholson, is also on the board as our current vice president and will continue to be that. And am I missing anybody? Shauna Gamble is a board member and has been, I think she now is into her second term. I think that covers it. Unless I forgot anybody, I hope not. I apologize. We have district administrators on this feed as well. I know they're very interested in seeing how things are rolling out. They've been a part of this process from the beginning as well. So with that, I want to introduce Richard Lindsay. Richard, would you have a few comments to make in welcoming people?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Davis. I want to welcome everybody this morning on behalf of the board. This process has already been going on for over a year, and I want to thank the committee that's been working on this. They've done walkthroughs of all the schools. They've done a lot of in-depth analysis of the bits and pieces of this to bring it to this level. At this point, we, being the board, are very, very interested in what the community has to say. I mean, this is a momentous thing to make this decision to put it on a ballot. We want to, if we put it on the ballot, we want it to be something that has a good chance of succeeding and doing what the community wants. So we're really glad to have you all here today, really anxious to hear what you have to say at the end after Dr. Davis's presentation. And please, if each of you will tell a couple of your friends to come to the next one, I think we can get a good feel for what the community would like to see going forward. So welcome, and here we go.
All right. Thank you, Richard. The meeting's purpose, Marshall Public Schools has been exploring the possibility of this bond possibly in August 2021 election. And that's to enhance, of course, our educational facilities across our district that covers all communities in which we serve in both Albion and Marshall as well. We are seeking your input, as Richard talked about. We're going to review the Citizens Committee recommendations, and then we're going to be talking about the Board of Education and the final decision to submit information to the Michigan Department of Treasury by March of 2021. I want to reinforce the fact that this is possible. We're exploring the bond. We haven't made the final decision as a board, and the board has to make that final call. So right now we're fact finding. We're getting feedback, and we're considering what priorities need to be made and what kind of scope this bond could take shape in if we are to make it to an election in August of 2021. That timeline is also open for discussion as well. So everything's on the table right now, and we want to share with you what we've gleaned. Let's see, why is that not moving? There we go. Let's give you a little bit of a history. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I want to try to cover this content in about 60 minutes. So please bear with us. But we want to give you the district improvement history of our school buildings across the district. To begin with, we did a review of our 20-year history and millage history for both the Albion Community Schools and the Marshall Public Schools. We looked at the 2016 Albion School District annexation into Marshall Public Schools, and our district commitment at that point was to make sure that we didn't require taxpayers from Marshall to pick up the debt from Albion, or Albion taxpayers to pick up the debt from Marshall. In looking at this chart, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. We looked at the 18 mills non-homestead and our history, both in Marshall and also down here in Albion. We also looked at our sinking funds and how that transpired over the years. We looked at bond initiatives and whether those bond initiatives passed with the sinking funds or the bond funds. And let's just look at the history just as an example. Marshall Public Schools had a history and an experience of voting on 18 mills non-homestead every year. Albion was actually doing, and rightly so, was doing asking for 18 mills non-homestead over a period of time. So if you can see, Albion actually passed the 18 mills non-homestead on 2007 that lasted into 2016. When you look at the 18 mills up here for Marshall at that same time, we had an annual election of the 18 mills non-homestead. Finally went, after I arrived in 2009, finally went to a 2-year span in 13-14, and then we went to a 4-year span in 2016, and now we're into a longer span in 2019. We also want to show you the sinking fund. It was in 2016 when the sinking funds were merged. Actually, Albion had a 5-year sinking fund that went off the books on was scheduled to go off the books on 2018, but when we did the annexation and joined both school districts in 2016, we basically had the Albion voters pick up on the 1 mill instead of, I believe their millage was a little higher than that, and now we're all on the same board. The other thing I want to say about the 18 mills, that was the first time in 2019 we actually had a vote collectively for all taxpayers within the newly formed district to approve the 18 mills non-homestead. And in 2019, that passed virtually in every precinct, albeit a couple precincts by a few votes, but it did pass unanimously when you look at the precincts, and it was a majority that approved that 18 mills non-homestead. When we look at the bonds, Marshall Public Schools has primarily looked at capital improvement bonds more frequently than the Albion community has looked at bonds. And the bond payment that was in existence at the time of annexation in 2016 for Albion was due to expire in 2020. That's actually occurred. And so at this point, there are no millages going to capital improvement bond in the old debt of the old Albion community schools. For us, in Marshall, the Marshall Community Schools or public schools had bonds passed in 01. There was a bond passed in 07. There was a failed bond attempt in 08. There was a most recent bond passed in 2010. That 2010 bond for Marshall Public Schools continues to go forward. We pretty much paid off the lion's share of the first question in the bond, which was capital improvements in all of our facilities. The last question on the improvements of our Performing Arts Center at the high school is continuing the debt that we basically continue to owe. We'll talk a little bit further about that in future meetings, but we just wanted to give you a bird's eye view of how things are going with our facilities. One other thing I want to say, and it's going to come up again, is that in 2016 and to 2017, after the annexation, we were able to glean considerable amounts of revenue or funds from the state to be able to support upgrades in our facilities. The 3 main facilities that we had operational in Albion, as well as the demolition of the Caldwell building. I'm going to move on to the next. That's just a little bit of our millage history. In December of 2019, we had.
Hey, Randy.
Yes.
Randy, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I'm really excited about the group of people we have here that we don't normally have. I wanted to mention that one thing that we did as part of the Marshall debt was to refinance and to lower the interest rate and to lower the payback rate, which puts us in a position to be able to do more things more quickly. And again, I think that was a really important part of what has happened over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, appreciate that extra comment. So we looked at the facility chronology narrative developed by our district, our facilities director, Brad Shedd. We looked at the facility original construction dates. We looked at dates of additions and major remodeling and current usage and recent improvements. That all came as information that was shared directly to the committee. And part of that process is to consider what is the shelf life or what is the expected life of a building. Usually it's like 40 to 50 years with improvements that are continually going on to make sure upgrades are occurring. And as you can see, well, we're not going to go through, we don't have the time to look at all of the detail behind this, but it is available, and we did have it available to our committee. So we know that there are some facilities that have had very little improvements done over the course of the life of that particular building. And it came into the decisions that our committee was making and some of the recommendations on next steps. Our Facilities Assessment and Planning Committee. So we did a facilities assessment back in 2006, leading up to the 2008 failed bond in Marshall. So that was primarily around our facilities in Marshall, and that's 3 elementary schools, middle school, and a high school. We also continued because there were needs that were addressed or identified as far as needs for the facilities that could have been taken care of or and might have been taken care of in the 2010 bond, but there are still existing needs out of that assessment. We also then did a 2019 new assessment generated from incorporating Albion facilities. And at that time, we were looking at Caldwell, Kroll, Harrington, and the Opportunity High School. In that process, we also looked at the needs of those facilities. We had our consultants engaged in benchmarking our facilities, and that's with King Scott and CSM. And then they developed a huge sequence of information and data on each of the buildings that our committee, Facilities Needs Committee, formed. We reviewed our code and safety issues, our life cycle of the buildings, our educational capacity, and on what the teaching and learning spaces provide. We looked at energy savings, opportunities, and those types of things. So in the facilities assessment, identification of all major systems and current conditions, written reports with pictures. So as an example, you'll see here at Kroll School, we looked at the mechanical floor drain condition varied. We looked at water heaters. We're looking at the boilers. Our 2-inch water meter provided domestic water to the building, but then we had to take a look at the piping and those types of things that went on and so forth. We also had some upgrades that we did in 2016, 17, and 18 that involved repainting the building at Kroll and those types of things that included asbestos removal, et cetera, to make that more functional to continue services in Kroll. Each of the recommendations received cost estimates and information. And that's some of the capacity that we do as a committee. Cost information here is over 55 million of need was identified across all 8 facilities that we currently have in operation. Representative of the facilities in use as they currently exist and with no additions or no changes. And this does not include wants and wishes. This is strictly the facilities as they stand today. So when you go through this process, Kroll Elementary right now, I'm going to look at the construction totals estimate, and if you look down here on the left hand column, we look at site, architectural, exterior, and interior. We look at ADA code assessment, security, mechanical and plumbing, electrical, and district identified needs, which have not been filled in this chart because, again, that was identified through this process with the bond. We look at estimated construction totals. So, and then bond issuances and election costs as we go forward. Let's just look at this amount right here before we get into bond. Kroll Elementary was assessed to have, just on simple needs for continued operations, $7,855,000 worth of upgrade. Gordon Elementary had $615,000. Harrington Elementary had $10,820,000. Hughes Elementary had $3,985,000. Walters had $372,000. Middle school has $3,691,000. Opportunity High School has $24,289,000. High school had $2,401,000. Those are identified needs. And then we have to take a look at, based on those needs, how do we cover those as immediate short-term operational changes and long-term operational changes. And we'll talk about buckets of money, but primarily we have a sinking fund that we're able to do, and through our general operations budget, we're able to do upgrades in our facilities. And the sinking fund does have limitations to what those upgrades could be. And then we have the other opportunity is to get private dollars to support us in improving facilities. Like most recently, we received a large grant from a benefactor in the community to bring air conditioning into Hughes Elementary, in which we've started that project. And then the other one is, of course, the bond. That's primarily how schools in the state of Michigan receive funding through taxation that allows us to take those dollars directly to capital improvements. Okay, so then the facilities needs and our partners went through a conditioning rating. We looked at the matrix developed to provide a condition rating per individual facility, reveals differences between facilities regarding facility conditions, identifies where to focus efforts to create equitable learning environments. Equitable learning environments primarily are looking to make sure that every child has equal access to quality teaching and learning environments across the entire district. So when we look at, again, what those areas of review, we looked at structure, exterior, the roof, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, ADA compliance, interior finishes, equipment and furnishings, site and FCR weighted. So the weighting comes down through where are we at and how does this stack up? As you look at it, lowest would be the biggest challenges that we would have, and the highest would be the least challenges that we have. If you look at the 4.8 rating for Walters, that makes sense because that's the most recent build that we've had. You look at 4.6 for the high school. That means that's in pretty decent shape and continued operations. And then you just go on down through 4.0 is for middle school and for Gordon Elementary. 3.8 is our Hughes Elementary. 2.4, 2.4, and 2.4 are the three buildings that we have in Albion: Kroll Elementary, Harrington Elementary, and Opportunity High School. So that takes all things into consideration. It tries to put on a priority list, what do we need to do with our facilities to bring them into quality teaching and learning environments and good mechanical so that we have sustainability. Assessment key findings that came out of this process: educational environment equity differences between the 8 buildings of our newly formed district. And that's across the board. And our committee had unanimous experience to that, is that as we went through our tours and so forth, you would walk out of a building and go, yeah, this is a lot different. Either, you know, higher quality in teaching and learning environments or lower quality. Major cost differences just for essential facility upkeep. We know that there's a huge cost associated with facility upkeep at the Opportunity High School for our mechanicals, our plumbing, our heating, and our electrical. And so when we look at that, that's just the mechanical piece of that building. It's not about facelift. It's not about adding things into the building. It's just essential. We had the same issue with other buildings, and we're taking a look at each one of those. Some of them have more need than the others. Our maintenance efforts to keep all facilities operational and comfortable have been strong. We continue to leverage our sinking fund in a very quality way, and we really appreciate the voters in maintaining that. But it's sometimes beyond our reach to be able to bring these things up to where we need to do without a bond. No new facilities or additions to Albion buildings since 1967. Marshall buildings with additions and major remodeling in 2010. Albion buildings with major remodeling that we were able to accomplish in 2016 for the revenues that we were able to secure from the state during annexation. So those are the big takeaways that we had as we looked at our boilers. I remember that when we did the annexation, I thought it was a pretty good use of the facilities was Caldwell. If you remember, Caldwell was extremely challenged, and we needed to tear that down and raise it because of the safety issues that created for the community. In that, though, there was a boiler that was pretty much in really good shape and hardly ever used. We were able to disassemble that and locate it to Harrington Elementary to bring that boiler back up to speed in a fairly quick way with our facilities team, which was a Herculean effort to bring that in. So those are the ways that we were able to leverage assets to be able to keep on investing in our facilities in Albion, in particular to restart Harrington Elementary. Our community member committee, we had district administrators, principals, and teachers. What we did with that process was to make sure that we went through each facility with our thought leaders from both communities. We had thought leaders representing Albion and Marshall. And thank you very much for the committee. It's been a great effort. It's been a year since we convened and started that process. We had district staff involved, Board of Education, parents, community members, and consultants. Over 35 members representing both communities were active participants in this process. Just here's a couple pictures of the folks that were in that, just a screenshot. So our timeline. Historically, in July of 2019, MPS approves expiration of facility master planning and capital improvement bond. So that's when everything got restarted or jump-started from our partners with CSM and Kingscott and our facilities team. In July of August of 2019, our facilities assessment was done. October and December of 2019, the Facilities Needs Assessment Core Committee met 6 times in a row to be able to get things started and inform the board. December 19 through March 2020, we had 9 meetings with added community thought leaders, principals, and staff leading tours of all of our facilities and unpacking what those needs were. And then, of course, COVID hit. Don't you love it? And we had a little bit of a delay in that process. In October of 2020 through January 2021, we had 7 meetings working on prioritization and recommendations that were percolating up from our process and all the data we were looking at. In January 2021, which is where we're at now, 4 community input meetings are planned. This is the first one of 4. And in February 2021, meeting recommendations to board for education, to our Board of Education. The committee, this committee that we formed with the thought leaders, have already submitted a recommendation on not only the buckets that have been defined, but also where they think that sits in regards to recommendations to the board on priorities. That is one aspect of how we're getting feedback to the board. This is one aspect right now currently that we're looking forward to getting feedback from the community at large. All of these forums will be compiled as far as feedback along with the committee for the board to sort through, continue open dialogues about this at the board session with open meetings to be able to then help them define, number one, the scope of the bond, potential bond. Are we going for the potential bond? When is that going to occur? and what is that going to comprise of. So this is the timeline that we're generally working off of. So guiding principles that develop this process that we want you to think clearly about as you're thinking about priorities too is student success is a priority. You know, we don't do these improvements to capital or these capital improvements to our facilities just for doing it. We do it because we want to create good learning, quality learning environments for our kids. Every student, regardless of what school or a student walks into, should be the same, should offer the same opportunities for success. Impact to students' ability to learn, equal opportunities, facility quality drives student success. How kids feel about that facility, how our teachers feel about that facility, and what's available to our kids for learning, teaching and learning has got to be equal across the board. Solutions should be attainable in the public's opinion, because our taxpayers and our public need to recognize we are being good stewards of our facilities and our resources that we ask them to commit to on an annual basis. Long-term solution with flexibility and adaptability, especially in this circumstance with the pandemic. We have to always think through that lens of the pandemic and its impact most recently in our schools. How do we create flexibility so we can be more nimble, more creative, and more flexible in the delivery of our educational system in the future? Focus on teaching and learning environment, equity between all the schools. Solutions should remain a feeling of community spirit, maintain a feeling of community spirit. And I want to say to help solidify our community spirit as it relates to your public school that serves both Albion and Marshall. And student safety always is a concern for us, and the solution will enhance the security of our facilities to benefit student and staff safety and those that are visiting our facilities. These are the guiding principles that the committee established and that we considered and looked at through this lens as we looked at the recommendations from the committee.
Hey, Randy, I wanted to interrupt really quick to remind people how to ask questions. So if you have a question during the presentation, you can hit the reaction button and raise your hand and we'll get to you, or you can type a question in the chat box. So I just wanted to put that out there for everyone.
Thank you, and thank you.
Randy, I want
that.
to say
Richard?
again, and again, at the end, we're going to have people ask comments. So please stay with us. And Randy's getting through this, but stay with us and please ask questions. Yep.
I think we're on pace though. Here we go. Marshall Public School staff input and facilities tours. Okay, so we did tours. We sent a survey out to our staff, all staff and our administrators. Each building had a building representative from the teachers and an administrator that took us on the tour. And our committee was able to go through the process of looking at that and hearing what their priorities were for each of their buildings. We also did that with our athletics, with our performing arts, with our technology. And did I miss anything? I don't think so. Our committee findings, this is where we compiled our recent findings and have issued those to the board as they consider next steps. Wants and wishes and prioritization. After we've identified the core needs of each of the buildings, we asked in that survey, what are your wants and wishes? What would you like to see envisioning that could improve the district? So better value to the students and community to replace Harrington Elementary than to remodel and add additional classrooms and gymnasium. When we take a look at what the costs were for that, what the shelf life of that building is, it was much better, and it was really 87.5% of the committee responded with, hey, building a new elementary school for our kids in the Albion community is a top priority. District to explore a disinvestment of Kroll facility to alternative uses. Right now we have early childhood programs, but they're all being provided by third party or partners with us in regards to early childhood programming through the ISD, through the Battle Creek Y, and also through Community Unlimited and Community Action. So we're really not directly involved in service delivery. We are actually providing that building for those services to be used. Crowell Elementary, it's long-term. Expectation is it doesn't have a lot of shelf life, and we have to figure out how we're going to best use that facility and maintain it, or have the board move to some kind of definitive decision about that. Need to determine uses for Opportunity High School and community sentiment towards this facility. The community high school on Watson Street is a huge footprint for our school as far as property. The improvements that need to be made at the Opportunity High School, as you can see in this one possible scope scenario, is 11 million, almost $12 million. That's going to be a real challenge for us. So we have to take a look at that. I mean, one of the things we want to hear from the community is how valuable is that facility for the community, and having operations from that community, that school. We also had capacity issues at all elementary schools, especially when we talk about auxiliary staff or itinerant staff. More and more, we're adding those for social emotional learning, for supports, for coaching, especially with the gap and the challenges for progress and student learning during this period of time with pandemic. We're going to have more and more issues there as well. Athletics and performing arts items incorporated into cost information. Athletics has a lot of really great ideas. We have to come to grips with that, and we have to take a look at how make sure we've continued to invest in that along the way, especially in our facilities in Marshall in 2010. We need to really understand what does that look like for our facilities across the district. Classroom furnishings haven't been updated in decades. This is the last thing that school districts across the state make a determination of, is to make sure that we have newer furniture or more aligned furniture for 21st century learning. And we have not been able to do that. We've done it in pockets whenever there's been an upgrade, like in our science wing or a biology wing at the high school, but we haven't done it across the board. And most districts think this is the last thing they have to think about, but it's costly. It costs about $2 million to do that project. Technology, equipment, and infrastructure upgrades are critical. They are definitely critical to the process. 75.5 million in identified scope to be prioritized. Committee prioritizations and findings. This is in order, but it's not to define the priorities. The board needs to define the priorities after hearing from the community as well as the committee. But first, with student technology and improved district technology infrastructure over 5 years. This is the first bucket, if you want to call it that. Second bucket is to replace Harrington Elementary with a new facility. The third is to add 4 classrooms to Gordon Elementary to alleviate overcrowding issues that we have in the elementary schools that we have in Marshall. Replace classroom furniture district-wide over a 5-year period of time is the fourth one. Fifth one is essential upgrades to Marshall High School, and that's pretty much mechanical. Sixth one is essential upgrades to the Opportunity School, and again, that's pretty much mechanical. Seventh one is to replace several music instruments, and that's significant, and performing arts equipment and uniforms, band uniforms and so forth. The eighth one is to enclose Hughes Elementary courtyards. If you've been in Hughes, there's 2 rather large courtyards. Create new administrative office addition and bring those courtyards more into usable learning spaces or meeting spaces. Ninth one is the soccer softball complex and entry gateway north of the student parking lot at Marshall High School. There's a beautiful rendition about that. The 10th one is remodel Marshall High School main athletic stadium, the soccer field, bring in artificial turf, entry gateway to the building. 11th is to make minor improvements to Marshall High School baseball field. And the 12th one is add auxiliary gymnasium at the Marshall High School. Those are the buckets that we're considering. Every one of those buckets are still on the table because we need feedback. And we need people to critically look at these issues and come back and say, you know, That's what I can support in the next bond. Committee recommendations. Consider bringing a bond election to the taxpayers of the district in August 2021. Highest priority is to create a new elementary facility in the Albion community to replace Harrington and address our needed technology upgrades. And then address our educational environment differences of equity, because we want to make sure that every kid has equal access and opportunity. 80% of our surveyed committee members recommended district consideration of the 2021 capital improvement program. And the committee has targeted August of 2021 as the election date at this point. Next steps and timelines. We're almost to questions. Next steps. February 15th of 2021, the Board of Education meeting has to approve a final bond scope and authorize documents to be submitted to the Department of Treasury. Treasury meeting is in the first, gets to March 2021. Treasury approval is submitted to the district by May of 2021 or earlier, depending on how they act. District Board of Education votes to approve ballot language to be submitted to the county clerk in May of 2021. Grassroots campaign begins in May and goes through August leading up to the election. That is generated by an independent grassroots committee that the district does not control. We certainly support, but when in that period of time during the grassroots campaign, I and my colleague Becky Jones will be going around and we'll be giving facts and information, but we will not be advocating for approval of a bond. That is left up to the grassroots effort. And then the election day is August 3rd, 2021. Timeline, two-phased fixed timelines. Scope of potential bond must be submitted to the Treasury of March of 2021 for approval to move forward. Community-led Vote Yes campaign would begin in May 2021 through August 2021. I want you to see that the approval of the first of scope and developing Treasury application is the 15th of February. Bond application is 23 days later on 2/16. I'm sorry. Takes 23 days to develop that. It begins on 2/16/2021. Treasury meeting is March 22nd, 2021. Board approval of application is March 22nd, 2021. Treasury approval takes 30 days or less, depending on how fast they react. This is a key vote right here, or decision right here by the board. The Board of Education then calls a meeting by May 3rd of 2021. If the board hears from the community and hears from our constituents that maybe August is not the correct date for us, they can delay this call of action. We would have to reinform the Treasury that we're delaying it. We'd have to go through a cursory or approval of the bond initiative as well, and the board would have to estimate when that next election could occur. But should they move on May 3rd of 2021 to call the election, the developing campaign material, voter engagement and yes campaign begins for 96 days. So a lot of open forums and discussions and coffee clutches, if we're allowed to do that, those kind of things like we did in 2010 because of COVID. Develop campaign materials in committee and calendar events, boots on the ground campaign, and then the election day on August 3rd, 2021. Timeline after the election. An August 2021 election would create the opportunity to have students and staff occupying the new facility for Harrington for the elementary school in the fall of 2023. And that's pretty aggressive, but that's what we're looking for. 8 months of design time, months competitive bidding process, 16 months of construction, and then occupancy in 2023. So to get to 2023 to open up a new elementary, at that time, we would need to have an election in August of 2021. Questions? Hey, I did pretty good. That took 40 minutes. I I hope you guys didn't fall asleep. This is important information. We wanted to give you a good thumbnail sketch of that. You're welcome to hold on to this presentation and refer to this presentation on live stream. I'd like to know if you have any questions at this point that we can answer. Becky, are we, how's it looking?
You had one question that says, does the district have a matrix to define student success? And Richard Lindsay had responded and said we had a number of matrix that we watch. It's hard to put it in the chat, but we can provide specifics to people.
Yes, and thank you for that. And after mentioning the word matrix too, one of the suggestions, I think is a great suggestion, is to take a look at our enrollment scatter plot of all of our students in Albion and where they live relative to whether they're attending Harrington Elementary or they're attending one of our elementaries in Marshall, as well as who's attending the Opportunity High School within Albion and so forth. I think that's going to be a really great idea. I think that came out of Albion College, and one of our committee members, Doug, is a good idea to do, and we're going to do that fairly quickly. Because we need to look at demographics. We're always looking at also projections on enrollment. And then we're also looking at how well we're doing academically, as well as gaps in achievement and those types of things. So thank you for that question.
Sonia Brown has a question. She's not going to type it in the chat, so we'll just let her ask her question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Sonia.
Hey, Sonia.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't type it because it's kind of long. And I'm not even, I don't have it. Well, okay, let me go. So first of all, excellent presentation, Randy. It was very informative. I have listened in on a few of the committee meetings. So, I knew some of the information. I also want to commend you on the guiding principles slide. And what stuck out to me was the community spirit, and also the importance, kind of the sentimental value of the high school building to the Albion community. But with that, I think it's important too for the community to know in weighing that importance and that sentiment for that building, what the alternative could be. And by that, I mean the potential partnership with Albion College for an elementary school. And I don't know, I know there are three more presentations, I think, and I'm hoping that there's a piece that could be added so the community knows what to consider in weighing the importance of the high school building and the sentiment of the high school building, as compared to the potential offerings of a partnership with Albion College. So I just wanted to throw that in. Another thing too, within the Albion community, as far as the use of the high school building, I know the college and the Y recently entered a partnership. So the use of facilities for recreational purposes has kind of been, and the use of the local parks has been, kind of steered away from the high school building.
I'm sorry, is there a what? Sonia? Did anybody catch that question?
I didn't catch it.
I didn't hear.
Let me respond.
She basically just said she was just talking about what the alternatives were, and since the Y is not going to be up there, what else might be?
Yes,
that's what I heard.
Okay, thank you. So yes, we have a meeting scheduled coming up next week with Albion College to explore the offer for collaboration in regards to the site location for the elementary school. We are looking also at all 4 properties that the school owns in Albion. So we're going to be looking at our Kroll property, our Opportunity High School property, the Caldwell property, and Harrington property, as well as the properties that the Albion College may be talking about in offering our collaboration. So we're going to vet all of those, and we're really pleased and proud to have Albion College being interested in exploring that further with our school district. So Sonia, I appreciate you bringing that to us, and I would really like to ask if you have some good ideas about how to weigh the importance of our complex on Watson Street within the community of Albion. That would be really important for us to hear, because we heard that early on when we did during the annexation. We heard the importance of Kroll, we heard the importance of the Opportunity High School, and so forth. And I know things do change over time, so we'd like to have that conversation, or at least get feedback even in the surveys on how people are feeling about their investment in those locations. So thank you, Sonia, for bringing that up. What else we got, Becky?
Okay, Randy, a couple things. Sorry, Richard. I know Garrett Brown and Daniel Heckman had their hand raised. And I just wanted to make the comment that Nancy Lewis had asked if there's been any conversations with Albion College and concerning their recent vision of the new Albion school elementary location. So I think you just answered that. And Garrett Brown had said that he wanted to make sure that that's going to be explored and discussed. So I don't know if Mr. Brown still has a comment to make or not, because he has his hand raised. I'd like to let Mr. Brown go.
Just Becky, while he's unmuting, I just wanted to mention there was discussion at the last. Garrett, I just want to say there was discussion at the last meeting of the committee about things like focus groups and an additional survey that would again focus on where the need was. Me personally, and I think I can speak for the board, we really want to hear from the Albion community what you'd like to see relative to this, and we'd like to develop some options to be able to do that.
So go ahead, Garrett.
Okay, I'm just gonna be very brief. So yeah, I got in on listening and participating in the committee towards the tail end here of it, but I was on the meeting or watched when Dr. Johnson made his presentation, and I know there was basically a discussion about if Harrington was going to be if a new elementary is going to be built, kind of where would it be situated? Would it be close to the old high school Opportunity campus, or I know that Dr. Johnson had basically pitched doing it near the middle school, Washington Gardner, and I think there've been discussions about, like, right now in Albion, in terms of like pool access. The high school has a pool. I know the College Dow Center has a pool. I know if I remember correctly, the president was pretty direct that he would be willing to even like build a pool if he did that. So I want to make sure that like everyone has been saying, that the public knows about that, because I know that at least in recent years have been efforts to be, kind of have some collaboration. I know Oakland has created the what do you call that? The Urgent Care Center in the new Wilson Institute building at Munger Place. And so I think that the vision that he was articulating would be very helpful for the community, because it would be like a combination of resources for students in a really compact area. So I think that that's something that we don't want to just kind of gloss over. We want to make sure that we keep that in the forefront of options, because I know lots of times people kind of settle on one option. There's like a small group of people do that, and then you push it forward without exploring other options. So I think that that's something that, like Nancy was saying, and like I'm assuming Sonia was probably mentioning too, that's something that needs to be put before the public as an option. And I don't know, last thing I'll say, I know at one point the college had a program to kind of prep prepare teachers for the district, with a focus on teachers of color. And I don't know the current status of that, but I would think that partnering with the college would also open up opportunities to continue those kinds of programs. So that's all I'm saying, is a comment to say that, and an encouragement to make sure that we keep that option in the forefront as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Good.
Okay, is it Daniel Heckman? He had his hand raised. Would he like to go?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Being a retired superintendent from Plainwell Schools, I was there for 10 years, and we had to deal with pool infrastructure issues over that 10-year period a couple different times, and they weren't cheap. And I'm just wondering if the pool condition and necessary upgrades and infrastructure were looked at during this assessment, because we constantly had to deal with upgrades there. And I just want to commend Randy Davis and the committee for this presentation, and your planning to put this together.
Thank you, Dan. And you know that pools are expensive to run.
Oh, yes.
So we took a look at that on a monthly basis, and we've done some upgrades with the pool, but there's constantly issues that come up with. We have a pool in Marshall, we have a pool in Albion, and those are always an issue to make sure that you're keeping them upgraded.
Are there any needs that need to be addressed in the upcoming bond issue related to those two pools?
It's considered under the mechanical piece for the Opportunity High School, because we're always looking at that, but we're addressing those things through our sinking fund and operational budget. And it is a challenge to continue to do those things.
Brad, do you have anything to say about the current status of the pools that we have?
Yeah, the high school, Marshall High School pool is in pretty good shape. That was modernized with all the piping and things about 10 years ago now. And we've been keeping up with the major issues at the Opportunity High School. Like we just this last fall installed a new heating boiler for that pool that had been separated from the main boiler system a number of years ago. And so that's been up and running. So right now, I mean, to look to Mr. Heckman's comment, there's no huge things out there at the moment. But there's, probably the next thing we're working on is exhaust. But again, that would kind of fall under the infrastructure stuff that's planned, that's out there for the Opportunity High School.
It wasn't mentioned. I just want to make sure that it was put out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I kind of how I'm doing this. I know Robert had raised his hand, so I want to go ahead and give him a chance to talk. And then we got a couple questions within the chat we can go through next. I haven't seen anybody else raise their hand, so I'll let Robert unmute and go ahead.
Good morning. Very, very informative presentation. The one question that I know is going to be asked, and I think we should address it on the identified needs. We got 75.5 million that you're looking at. How long a bond issue would you be looking at if you were looking at the total amount? And what would the bond rate be? And I think they do it based on $1,000 of assessed value. Because when you start going to the community, I'm sure that's going to be one of the issues that's going to be paramount in front of the people is how much is this going to cost on my taxes, and how long will the bond run? Because if I'm not mistaken, Randy, the graphs you showed that the current bond issue in Marshall, I think, has 8 years life left in it before it's paid off.
Yeah, I got to look at that, Bob. I don't have it right in front of me, but the reason why I don't is because Number one is the 75.5 million is the total estimated of all the buckets if we were to do everything.
Right.
And this process right now is to kind of weed that down and try to figure out what are the most important things to bring forward. And then what's that scope going to look like? And then how do we apply the expectations of the bond and how that's going to impact the millage? Right now, we have a commitment or a circumstance in which we're right around 7.05 mils with the taxpayers from the old Marshall District. And we continue to pay that down. Becky, do you know when that goes off? Is Bob right, around 2034?
I was thinking 30, 32, 34.
Yeah.
For the Marshall District.
So if we did nothing, we would have about 10 years, Bob, to get down to the point where we pay that last piece of the 2010 bond off. But if we do nothing, we would have no improvements and no changes to what we're currently doing with our facilities. So we're
Right.
kind of in that rock and a hard place trying to figure out how do we move that forward legitimately so the voters find value in that. Our process is this session, the next session will be repeating this one and possibly a third, but by the time we get to the next, the third or fourth open forum, we're going to be talking exactly about what you're talking about. What's the total estimated kind of ballpark we're looking at? How long is that going to go for? What's the analysis on the millage impact it would have on the taxpayers for the old Marshall District and the taxpayers for the old Albion Community School District? Right now, Albion is not paying anything on a capital improvement bond currently. They are paying a sinking fund along with all taxpayers around the district. They're paying into the sinking fund, but right now they have zero on their capital improvement bond, and Marshall has 7.05, and that's scheduled to go down slightly over the next number of years. Does that help, Bob?
Yes, it's just going to be one of those things that I think the tax rate is also going to drive how much can be done out of that total 75 million. And then it's even going to be more imperative that the priorities are where it's going to affect our students the most.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of decisions to be made in a very short time.
Yep.
And
A
I'll
lot
go
of
back on
moving
you.
parts. Yeah.
Thank
And the other thing too is nowadays we take a look at a bond series sometimes as opposed to one big honkin' chunk because it's actually a better way of doing it. Let's for example, and this is only example, we have X number of dollars that we're looking for overall for the bond. We go after a partial drawdown on that X number of dollars initially. We do another partial drawdown, a couple years later, and then another partial drawdown a couple years later. That ends up saving the district and the taxpayers interest on those funds. It gleans the same amount of money and sometimes even a shorter period of time for payoff. So we're going to be looking at all of those scenarios by the time we get into our third or fourth open forum here, Bob, to make sure that everybody can see the differences in those strategies in regards to getting this bond passed.
Randy, I looked up from our financial advisor. They have our initial one to be paid off in 2033. It drops down to 0.87.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking. Good. Other questions?
Yes, there's other questions. Sorry, I was looking that up. Meglin McDonald had a question about where would the students go if and when we constructed a new building, a new elementary building in Albion. And then she asked if we'll have Albion community, will the Albion community have input for new elementary school designs? What would the overall budget for the construction of the new building be?
Yeah, good questions, Megan. So first off, we're going to continue to invest and operate into the Harrington Elementary to keep it operational during a build time until such time that we can transfer that over in a legitimate way before another school year begins, right? So we want to make sure, however long that construction is, that we continue to operate out of the Harrington Elementary School in a quality enough way to be able to get through that period of build. Secondly, right now the estimate for the build is around 16 million, 16 to 17 million. We're looking at a capacity of around 350 students at this juncture as an estimate. And then, of course, the teachers, the administrators, and the community will, when we get to that design phase, have direct impact and direct input on what that should look like. What we're basing a new elementary facility on is simply going back to our most recent build, which was Walters Elementary, and only looking at that as a footprint on how do we do enough square footage for educational space to make sure that all the quality things are there that every other elementary has in their buildings, and then to make sure there's adequate space for playground and those types of things, a bus loop for transportation drop off, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that design piece comes later.
Okay. Nora, the next question, Nora Jackson asked how the surveys were done and how many families or individuals were included from the surveys from Albion. And I think that there was a little bit of confusion when we referenced the survey from the Facility Needs Committee around the 87%. And I believe Nora is just wanting to make sure that we are going to be surveying the Albion community as a whole. So I just wanted to put that out there, Nora. If that's different, then let us know. But as of right now, I think she was just referencing getting community input through Albion.
Yes. So the short answer is yes. How that's going to look, one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing is communicating out to all of our families and parents that have children in our schools to make sure that they know of these forums, and also what those buckets look like as far as improvements. That's the initial feedback that we're looking for, Nora. And then after that, more specific involvement when we get to final priority establishment by the Board of Education requires public input into those meetings before the board makes that determination. And then finally, if and when we get to the point where we're going to call an election and go after that, all the design and conversations are going to go on after May and before August, talking about what is this going to look like, what are the specific needs relative to an elementary school, a new elementary school, or even upgrades in our facilities and so forth across the district. So those surveys will be ongoing. Our central office has a pretty good machine right now, along with the administration, on getting surveys out to folks. So we'll continue to do that.
Okay. The next question is from Marcia. As it concerns the Opportunity High School, any thought on keeping the pool, gym, and necessary classroom space and demolishing the unused space to save money to renovate and cut overall cost?
Yes, that's a part of the conversation that we've been having in consideration. It's kind of like, it's a renovation, kind of like a surgical demolition of some areas of the building that you don't need. And can you do that feasibly and financially reasonably so that you can keep things operational? So yes, that's on the table for consideration and discussion. Thanks for that suggestion.
Okay, Mr. Cottons would like to make a comment about the athletic facilities on the list. And we had a comment from Anthony Miller that said, hopefully the need to have an auxiliary gym continues to be the utmost importance. I believe this could impact a fair majority of students that come through MPS, along with impacting community members, events as well. And then it just said, thank you for the presentation. So if Dan Cottons wants to go ahead and unmute, I will let him go.
Good morning.
Hey, Dan.
Thanks for the presentation. Also, obviously, thanks to the committee for their time and effort over this period of time to put this together. As I looked at the priority list of the 1 through 12, I saw that the athletic items moved to the bottom of the list. And I just would like to comment while we have, folks that took their time this morning to log into this meeting. And I will share so publicly as well, that those athletic facility upgrades don't just impact our athletic teams. They also will impact our academic settings, especially the auxiliary gym. They will impact our community, which is why someone like Coach Miller, who has young children, obviously he's a basketball coach in our program, has vested interest, not only as a coach, but as a teacher in the community and as a parent, and realizes that these facility upgrades to our athletic complex will not only benefit athletes, but it will also benefit our educational process. I've been asked how would I prioritize those items on the list by colleagues and by community members who have now seen that list. And my response is that many of those items are on our athletic list are overdue. They're about safety. Some of them are about public health when it comes to concession areas. So there's a broader scope, and obviously, today's meeting meant to be brief and informational. It's difficult to go through all of the details. All of the other items on that list have the utmost importance to the educational success of our school district. So I'm not minimizing any of those by any means, but yet emphasizing what has been important to me for my 25 years here in this community as teacher, coach, parent, and now as athletic director. I would welcome any questions from folks via email or through my office phone. Our booster club also wants to be actively involved and can help answer questions as well. So I wanted to take the time this morning for the people that logged in to think about those things. And if they're unsure on any of those items, please ask clarifying questions. I believe the athletic piece will sell our district. While it is important for this bond to benefit our educational process, it is also to think about the future. My youngest child will probably have graduated by the time this process has taken place. As many people often ask me, when are you going to retire? I think they mean that because I'm getting older. And so I want Marshall Public Schools to flourish long after I'm gone. And if we're going to compete in a league, the Interstate 8, when we look at facilities, if people were to take the time to look at the other 7 schools in our league, you can see that we are in desperate need to update and improve our facilities. Marshall is important to me. Marshall is important to everyone on this meeting today. And I think the future of it, Marshall Public Schools, depends on academic success, facilities, and appearance. And this is strongly needed, all facets. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I think this is a good opportunity to reinforce what we said at the beginning of the meeting, is that the list, although it was in order of importance from the committee, nothing is off the table as we continue to have these conversations and get feedback from the community. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks, Dan. Richard Lindsay had a couple more things to say, so I'm going to go ahead and give it to him.
Yeah, first of all, Randy already said what I was going to say. None of this is off the table, and I'm really interested to hear from relative to the kind of the athletic community and supporters, what they have to say, and have been part of this, but need to be part of it going forward. So thanks, Dan, for making those statements. The other thing is, I just want to recognize we have the Albion mayor on the call. We have a number of Albion city council members, the Albion city manager. Thanks to all of you for being involved. We want to get the Marshall. I think, if I'm understanding correctly, Randy's going to make this presentation, or maybe a shortened version of it, to the city councils in both communities. Thank Bob Ling for being here as a Marshall Township trustee. this is really important, I think, to get input from the political bodies, the people that will hopefully advocate for this as we go forward. So again, please tell other people. We'll keep reaching out. We'd like to have the surrounding townships in Albion be involved as well. The other townships in around Marshall would be helpful. Me as a board member, this has been incredibly helpful, and to have the questions identified and then to keep gathering information, because my mind's not made up about any of this. So I very much appreciate everybody's involvement.
Thank you. So as we head out, it's right now it's almost 25 after 12. We wanted to try to keep this limited and respect your time for an hour and a half. I guess the other thing is to just talk about the survey. The survey is an opportunity for you to think through what you've heard and with what you know now and how you feel initially about this. And we're going to be asking for you to take a look at the survey and do prioritizing in your own mind about what's important, and give us an additional comment section, anything that we need to hear about this initiative and what we should be mindful of as we move forward. Your feedback is incredibly important in this process. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this. The survey is going to be posted in the chat. You can copy it, link it, and then be able to do the survey online. We're doing it this way so that we can have ease of calculation and bringing that qualitative data back for giving feedback into the board meetings. So I appreciate your participation in that. If anybody has any other questions, please let us know. Please fill it out. Our next session is January 13th, which will be a repeat of this one, possibly by the 19th. And to Bob Ling's question, we will get much more detailed into financing and those types of things as well. We have a last forum on the 23rd, Saturday, the 23rd of January. And then the board will be debating and dialoguing over these issues and trying to figure out what the next steps are. Marshall Public Schools is a broader district and a richer district in regards to our involvement with our diverse population of students in our school systems now. The work that we're doing collectively from community to community is pretty much unprecedented in a lot of times when you think about what the history of school districts have been in the state. We are doing a yeoman's job of trying to figure out how to make this all work. We're not perfect, but we certainly are striving to continue to improve every day. This is evident of this effort that we're considering right now on a bond. And I certainly hope you feel comfortable to give us the feedback that we need to hear. And we're open to that. And so thank you so much for participating. If there's anything else at the last minute here, we've got a couple more minutes to say before we sign off. Anything else?
Hey, Randy,
Yeah.
This is Todd McDonald, and I noticed that Richard posted that link. Maybe if people have problems with the link afterwards, can you give them an avenue of who to contact, since that is such an important piece of information?
Becky?
I was going to say that the survey is available on the front page of the Marshall Public Schools website. So if you're unable to grab that link now, you can always head over to our website and go ahead and do that. And then it was requested that the presentation be posted to the website. So I think we'll go ahead and get that up there as well.
That website is marshall.k12.mi.us.
MarshallPublicSchools.org too.
Oh,
you can get
okay.
there either way. So whatever outlet you need to do that. And then you're going to always feel free, if you're having problems with it, you can email myself at bjones@marshallpublicschools.org or Randy as well. He's R. Davis at Marshall Public Schools. So we're always available to help.
Thank you. And remember Richard Lindsay's request at the beginning. all of you that are on here, please reach out to your family, friends, and neighbors. Let them know that we're having this discussion and let them know about the next meeting coming up on January 13th. And we'll continue to make this available. And in this world, we're going to continue to do it virtually. And we'll see how things progress, but that's where we're at right now. So thank you very much. I hope this was helpful for everybody. All right. Shall we end?
We can end.
So I have a
Mark just said, if you open the survey link now, make sure you complete it because you won't be able to go back and revisit it or revise it. So I just wanted to put that out there. If people decide to click on the survey right now, make sure you go ahead and fill that out, please. Sorry, Shauna, cut you
No,
off.
that's okay. That's what I was gonna say is like we have until 12:30, so maybe we just wait until 12:30 to give everyone a chance to copy the link to the survey, and then we can get the links after the meeting posted on our website, on our Facebook page, so that people can still, access that in case for some reason they're not able to right now.
Sure, Shauna, we'll stay live for a couple, for 5-10 more minutes here.
All right, and I'll make sure that we get it posted to the Facebook page. Ian does a really good job of getting that communication out, so I'll ask him to go ahead and get that survey posted, and we can go from there. And if anybody thinks of anything after this, just let me know. We can go ahead and get it put out there for communication.
To Richard Compton, Richard, you can probably stop the live feed at this point because substantively we don't have any other discussions to be had.